Hey guys, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be doing a book roundup of all the different books that I read in January. Starting with Green Valley by Louis Greenberg. I picked this up at the Dollar Tree for $1. I was really interested in it because I tend to really like science fiction and stuff that involves like future technology and that kind of thing. I find it to be very intriguing and interesting. In this book, there are two cities that are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to technology. One of the cities, Green Valley, is completely AI, or VR, I should say. It's all virtual reality. Like, you go in, you get hooked up, like implanted into your spinal cord. The virtual reality moderates your hormones and stress levels and stuff like that, and you're wearing a headset, so everything you're seeing is virtual. You can be basically whoever you want to be in Green Valley. Then on the other side of that is a town that has gone like completely dark. They don't have smartphones, they don't have cell phones, they don't have the internet, they don't have security cameras. They were a group of people that fought to get their privacy back because they didn't like the way that they were being tracked and monitored. And so you've got these two completely different sides of a relationship to technology. And the big plot line is that there are children that are showing up dead. And so you go on a little bit of an adventure to figure out where these children are from, why they're dying, who's killing them if they're being killed. So it really takes you on an interesting adventure about technology and virtual reality. I will say I only gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because as interesting as the topic was, as interesting as the summary was for me, it got boring. It's not super long, but it just didn't hold my attention for long periods of time. At some parts it just fell flat. The writing just wasn't intriguing for me. But I did overall like the story, but it's definitely not a favorite. I wouldn't ever go back and want to reread it, though I would be interested to see it made into a movie or something like that. So yeah, 3 out of 5 for Green Valley. The next book I read was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I have read Red, White, and Royal Blue either last year or the year before, and I liked it, and so I was like, yeah, I'll give her newest book a shot. This book is really interesting. It's also kind of sci-fi. It's got kind of a time travel vibe to it. Basically, this girl meets this girl on a train, a subway, and she keeps seeing her on this train, and then through talking to her realizes that this girl is stuck on the train. She can't leave the train, and so then they go on a bit of an adventure and mystery to find out why she's stuck, how to get her unstuck, if they're able to get her unstuck. Is she gonna get sent back in time because they find out that she's from a different time? That plot line is really interesting. I will say a couple of things about this book. So overall, I did give it a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it, but okay, I don't want to be too critical, but I'm just going to be honest. I find that this book with this author, she describes things too much. I get so bored after a while because I'm I get it. Things are just described, and at the beginning of a book when you're first learning about characters and first learning about the world, I get it. You want to build the world up and create the characters, make sure that your reader really knows these characters. But eventually it just gets so drawn out because things just get described and described and described. And so for me personally, it's just I got bored. I wanted it to be over because I felt like it just dragged on too much. I will say that it felt like it was 100 pages too long. It just needed some editing down and it would have been great. The pacing was just off for me personally. I will also say this book is full of romance, and I have learned that I'm not a big romance person. I get bored with it. I get it. Like, after a while, I'm like, I get it. They love each other. I get it. And so just for me personally, I've learned I'm not a big romance person. And this book is heavy on the romance. But like I said, I did give it a 4 out of 5 because I did enjoy it. If you like diversity, this book is amazing with that. The characters are so diverse. If you like romance, it's full of romance. I love the time travel plot line. That was really interesting to me. So I would recommend this book if any of that sounds interesting to you. Okay, so I'm going out of order a little bit because I want to save my favorite book for last. But the next book I'm going to talk about is The Nightingale from Kristin Hannah. This is the first book I've ever read by her. And I picked this up because I saw someone on Instagram talk about how much she liked it. She didn't like say anything about it. I didn't know what it was until I had already bought it. This book takes place in France during World War II when the Nazis are taking over. And it's told by the perspective of 2 different sisters who are not Jewish, so it's not heavy on concentration camps, but more so like what's happening in the cities. It is quite long. The length of it was very intimidating, but this book, 5 out of 5, it was so good. It was so compelling. The story is well told. It's very well written. The characters are so beautifully written. Like, you just get to know them so well in a much deeper way than a book like this, which feels more superficial. Now, granted, they are very different genres. This is like very serious and harrowing, and this is like fun. If you want a story about women that is empowering and inspiring, I highly recommend The Nightingale. I will say it's very harrowing because it's about Nazis. I mean, and the atrocities that happened during World War II. Like, you should definitely know that going in. But it's so good. 5 out of 5. I left this book like needing to take a break after reading it because it just needed some time to really like digest and process. So yeah, overall 5 out of 5. Really lovely book. Right up there, almost neck and neck with my favorite book of the month. And the only reason this wasn't a favorite is because the other one, well, I'll get into that. But 5 out of 5, highly recommend The Nightingale. Okay, so before I get into my favorite book of the month, I am going to talk about a book that I didn't finish. So I really wanted to like this book, and I feel like I'm going to try and approach it later in the year after some time has passed and try and get into it, because there's something about it that I really want to like, and there's something about it that like draws me in, but I just it's so I cannot get into it. I have tried multiple times out throughout the month to get into this book, and I can't get into it. So it's A Marvelous Light. The reason I even really bought it, I didn't know anything about it. I bought it online when Barnes & Noble was having like a hardback or hardcover discount or whatever sale. I was just so drawn to this cover. I find it to be absolutely beautiful. I don't know why. It's like the colors and the floral print. I'm just like obsessed with it. I love the book cover, right? And then when I read about it, it's very magical. It takes place in a different time. It sounded interesting to me. It's basically, I can't even tell you much about it other than it's very magical. And the thing about the magic in this book is that for me, it feels realistic as far as magic can go. And it also doesn't feel like it's ripped off from something like Harry Potter. Now for me, I don't have a whole lot of background in magical books like outside of Harry Potter, because magic isn't really a genre that I read too much into. Love science fiction, but I haven't delved too far into like magic, I guess. So I don't know, but so for me, I liked that the magic felt real, and it also didn't feel like a ripoff from something that I've read before, or not a ripoff, but just similar to something I've read before. I did realize after a couple of chapters what it was that made it so hard for me personally to read. So I realized that this book is a me problem and not like the author, because, and I want to make that really clear, like Freya Marske, I don't know. I feel like she's a very talented writer, but the way that she writes is hard for me to read because she's very heavy on metaphors. Okay, so this is similar to this book, how I said that she describes things too much for my liking. She also describes things a lot. She is very heavy in metaphors and similes, and I get that it's a magical, it makes the book feel magical, it makes the writing feel magical. But for me, I'm someone that's very literal, and so when I'm reading, it's hard for me. It just takes me out of the story because I have to figure out what they're even saying, because the metaphors don't immediately make sense to me. And again, like I said, this is a me problem. I think it takes real talent to be able to write in metaphors. So I wanted to give an example of, and it kind of explain like where I'm coming from. Again, I'm going to reiterate, I think it takes skill to be able to write metaphors. It doesn't come naturally or easily to me. But here's an example. This is from page 44, and it's not a spoiler. A small index card flicked out of the stacks of Edwin's mind. Okay? Beautifully written, but you don't realize until the end of the sentence that what's happening is happening in the character's mind, that it's not actually happening. So a small index card flicked out of stacks, like I'm picturing like that literally happening. And then at the end of the sentence, you find out that it's just happening in his head. He's just like thinking and recalling information. That's what's happening. So for me, as someone who takes things very literal, I read that and it just takes me out of the moment, takes me out. It like stops my reading because I have a hard time figuring out what is being said, because what I think is happening is actually not happening. Then like the very next page, there's another example. He only realized when Blythe's fingers curled like dry leaves in a fire that he was tracing the symbols with his fingertip. So this one is different. This is more about just like describing the way the guy's hand looks. But for me, it's the type of thing that just like takes me out of the moment, because then I'm like, dried leaves in a fire, like it doesn't have anything to do with what's happening. It just, again, it's a me problem. It takes me out of the moment because my brain is then trying to, it's picturing dry leaves in a fire, but then also trying to picture like they're like touching hands or something. I don't know. The writing is very magical. It's very fantastical, which for whatever reason just makes it hard for me personally to read. So didn't finish this. Only got a couple of chapters in, a few chapters in. I tried multiple times throughout the month, like literally between each book, I tried to read this book because I was like most excited to read this book, and I can't get into it. So it's a beautiful cover, but I did have to put it on my DNF because I couldn't get through it. But I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful that I will be able to get into it at a later point in the year, maybe. Okay, now for my favorite book of the month. I went into this not knowing anything about it. This was another book that I saw someone on Instagram just randomly talk about, and she didn't say anything about it. She was just like, oh my gosh, I can't stop reading this book. I love it. And I was like, cool. So I didn't really read into anything about it. I just bought it and then started reading it. So my favorite book of the month was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Never read anything by her before, and I loved this book. 5 out of 5. It was such a fun and wonderful and heartwarming and interesting and intriguing, and there's twists, like there's things that you feel like are happening but maybe happen a different way. Overall, it's just a truly lovely book, and I will probably read this again at some point in time, maybe not this year, but loved this book. So an overview, you've got Evelyn Hugo, who is like an old-time actress who has had this very like luxurious career in Hollywood. She really made a name for herself. She's a bombshell. She's beautiful. She's been in all these different movies, but throughout her career, she's also been known to have several husbands. And so the book kind of takes you through each of those different relationships. Now, it's Hollywood, so obviously some of the relationships are just out of convenience or other circumstances. Some of the relationships are very short-lived. Some she's in for, you know, several years. And then there's one big thing about Evelyn that I'm not going to spoil. I didn't know anything about it going in, and I feel like that's the best way to go about it. It's just, it's fun to read. It was such a good read. It's also heartbreaking in some parts. It made me cry. One thing I didn't mention, rewind a little bit, this book also really made me cry. I don't think I mentioned that, but I feel like I should. This book made me cry, okay? Sorry. I didn't want to let that go unsaid. And the way that the book is told is that Evelyn is giving her like life story to a writer who's then gonna write her like biography. And even within that, there's like a little twist that I felt like I knew was coming. I felt like I knew what the twist was, and then it was slightly different. So that was a fun surprise. I will say it's like the perfect length. Like she knows how to edit. She knows how to keep the pacing perfect. 5 out of 5. I highly, highly recommend this book. Also a diverse cast. If they ever made this into a movie, I would just hope and pray that the casting is perfect. Like, that they even maybe go with, like, unknown actors or something. Though I wouldn't mind Harry Styles playing the part of Harry in this book, because there is a Harry in this book. And I'm like, yeah, I could see it. He could play it. That was the one thing that the girl that I saw on Instagram, she had said. She's like, I keep picturing Harry Styles as the Harry in this. And I was like, interesting. Really loved this book. I don't know what else to say other than I really loved it. And 5 out of 5. It's in the top running for favorite book of the year. Though it's very early, very, very early. So these are the books I read in January, minus that one, which I tried to read but couldn't get through. So yeah, that's it. Those are the books that I read this month, and I would love to hear if you've ever read any of these, what you felt about these books, or what your favorite book of this month that you read, or last month I should say, since it's February now. But yeah, let me know, and I will hopefully have another video like this at the end of February with even more books that I've read. But I will say that I'm really struggling with my health, and so I've been really dizzy lately, and so reading has been like really far down. And I've tried to listen to books like through my library, trying to like listen to audiobooks, and it's really hard for me to get into audiobooks. So we'll see. It's fine. I'll get better. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Let me know how you're doing. Be safe, be well. I hope you find ways to enjoy your life. For me, that's reading books, and I will see you guys in my next video. See ya. Bye.